this over the next couple of Sundays, and instead of doing my expository Bible teaching style, I'm going to be a storyteller. And I'm going to tell you some stories about my life or things that are going on, and I hope that through these stories that God would bless your life. When I was 19 years old, I grew up in Cheney, Washington. And when I was 19, me and a couple of friends, Bird and Monk were their nicknames. Gerald and Vern were their real names, but no one ever called them that. These two brothers. And I knew them, and they lived out in the valley, and we were kind of loosely connected from church. And here we were at 19 years old. None of us had ever seen the ocean. None of us had ever really been anywhere or done anything in our lives. We were sort of trapped. Both of our families weren't really highfalutin kind of big money, let's go vacation in Disneyland kind of people. My family and ideal vacation was to go to a cabin up on the little pond to go fishing for 3 days. And so at 19 we said, let's go see the ocean. And I had a friend who lived in Santa Barbara who was going to school down there, my buddy named Vincos. And I said, why don't we just go all the way to California and we'll just do this long, 2-week road trip to California, and we'll pick him up in Santa Barbara, we'll go down to San Diego, we'll see the beaches, and we'll drive the whole way back. And we said, let's do it, right? So we loaded up this green GTO muscle car, and the three of us headed down. We blazed down through Oregon, and about the time we hit the San Francisco Bay Area, we turned towards the coast so that we could go across the Golden Gate Bridge. Oh my God, we're going across the Golden Gate Bridge, right? Little farm town boys from Cheney, that's a big deal. And we drove all the way down, and as we're going down the coast, we did the coastal run from San Francisco all the way down towards Santa Barbara because it's the ocean. We hadn't seen waves, we hadn't seen the ocean, we had never seen a palm tree in our lives. So we're seeing all this, we're so ecstatic and so excited. We go by Hearst Castle, and we're driving past Hearst Castle, which is in San Simeon, about halfway between San Francisco and Santa Barbara, but it's in the middle of nowhere. And it's not on a main highway. You've got to be driving that crazy, windy coastal route. And you could look up on the hill and we could see Hearst Castle. And I'm like, hey, we don't have to see Vincos till 6 or 7 at night. And if we're late, no big deal. Because he was living in an apartment with 2 other friends. And the 2 other friends had gone on vacation. So we were just going to crash in his apartment for 3 days. Roll out sleeping bags on the floor. So it didn't really matter what time we arrived. We could be there way late. And I said, let's go. And we hemmed and hawed. We debated it. And they weren't quite as adventurous as me, so they were like, yeah, we should. They didn't quite know what Hearst Castle was. Do you guys know what Hearst Castle is? All right, yeah, those of you who've been there, a lot of you are like blank. Okay, it's Randolph Hearst, the newspaperman, built a home in the hills of San Simeon in the 1920s and the 1930s, and Clark Gable and Charlie Chaplin and all these people hung out at his house with him. I don't know how Charlie Chaplin could be a communist and hang out at the richest man in the planet's house at the same time, but somehow he pulled that off. And when you go there, there's 4 swimming pools, rooms that are galore. Now, after World War I, Hertz went all around Europe and he bought stuff to put in his home. So when you go and you see this statue that looks like a Donatello from Italy, it is the Donatello from Italy. Italy has the copy. The real one's at Hearst Castle. You see these fountains that are made out of these Egyptian sculptures, and you're like, oh, he copied Egypt. No, that's the 3,000-year-old artifact that came from Egypt. His house is full of, he raided Europe, and he raided Italy, and he raided Spain. And you go into these big banquet rooms, and there's this long table, and that's from a monastery in France, and the ceiling is from a castle in Spain. I mean, the whole thing is phenomenal, but when you're seeing it, it's all the real stuff from Europe that he bought him. And it's pretty phenomenal. So we're like, let's go see it. And they were like, we're in a hurry. Let's not. We'll do it next time. There'll be another time in our lives and we'll be there. Well, guess what? There never was another time. It would be 43 years before I would ever actually see Hearst Castle. And I'd be 62 years old. At 19, I had a chance to see it, and we passed it by. And at 62 years old, I went on a sabbatical and said, by God, I'm going to go see Hearst Castle. Because it took 43 years to recapture a moment that had passed by. And it had lived in me as a bit of a regret. When I went, I'm like, oh my God, Bird and Monk, you fools. Look what we could have done. Right? Sometimes in our life there are these moments that we think, next time. I'll catch up to that later. And later never comes. The truth is, I had to make a very concerted effort to say, that is going to be on my destination, because you can't drive by it. It's not anywhere near anything. Drive to Paso Robles, turn right, head for the coast, turn again, go right again, and up there. It's in the middle of nowhere. And so I went and saw it, and I was so glad that I did. And I realized I could recapture it, but it took 43 years to recapture that moment. I was recently reading Ephesians chapter 5, and I came across this verse. So then be careful how you walk, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. I would have said, for most of my life, when I read this verse, what the Apostle Paul is saying is, make sure that every chance you get to evangelize people, you evangelize them. Make sure that every chance you get to pray over people, pray over them. Make sure every time you get the chance to do some kind of ministry deed, do the ministry deed. But when I go back to that verse, don't be so fast on me, Catherine. Slow yourself down a little bit. So go back. But when I read it now, how I read that verse 16, making the most of your time because the days are evil. I read it as Jesus saying, live life to the fullest. Don't waste your days. Sometimes it's spiritual stuff that happens, but sometimes it's just the moment, and it's friendship stuff that needs to happen. It's relationship stuff that needs to happen. It's adventure that needs to happen. You live in an evil time in a wicked world that is destructive to your soul and your body and your mind and your psyche and your spirit. And as Jesus saying, I came to give them life and life more abundantly. Don't waste your days. That's how I read the verse now. And I've been reading that, and I'm reading it especially because he says, because the days are evil. You live in a harsh time that wants to knock you off your life. And Jesus is coming along and saying, be wise. Don't miss your moments. And not all the moments are just evangelizing people, praying for people, and sharing the gospel or whatever. Sometimes the moments are just loving life, being with friends. And this hit me because I was with this group of pastors now. I was with this group of pastors, and not yet. Wait, back up one. So I'm not quite ready for that. And so I'll give you a this, Catherine. I will thumbs up you. Okay, so obviously you can tell we didn't rehearse this. So I'm with this group of pastors for a year, and for the last year we have been going through who are we at the last season of our lives? They're all guys over 55. We're all around 60 years old. I'm the second oldest in the group, 64. And we're all like guys who've been in ministry for 20 plus years, right? And we've been on these Zoom meetings together and talking through life and trying to kind of figure ourselves out a little bit. All of us feeling a little restless because we're not going to keep doing the same things we've always done. And we want to do something called finish well. Not just drift off into retirement and just go recreate, but like still live for Jesus and his kingdom. Use all of the talents and the abilities and the skills that God has given us and create this moment that the literature we've been going through calls resonance. Hitting the perfect frequency where all the harmonies come together and you're like, this is what I do. And all the clutter is gone, all the distractions are gone, and you're focused on the main things and you finish well. Mentoring and handing off all your wisdom and your knowledge to the next generation, or finding that last call in your life that God would have for you to say, this is what you should do in the twilight as you fade into glory, right? And we know it's a fade because you don't have the physical energy you used to have. And you've, by now, usually around 60, you've, quote, built your, for lack of a better term, empire. You've built your ministry. You've built your world. You've founded your business. You've built it all. In your 50s, you're in the highlight of it. And around 60, it starts fading, and you start asking, how do I hand this thing off so it doesn't disintegrate? And I have felt that restlessness, and I am feeling it in the sense that I've never even felt like I reached my full potential. You ever feel like some of you guys my age, you're like over 55, and you're like, not only did I not get there, I never really quite felt like I reached my full potential. I remember one time when I laid down my church plant, it was a brutal, devastating time. We had so many betrayals and abandonments, difficulties and hardships. And my wife and I did a church plant for 4 years. We got knocked around. We We were meeting at a movie theater to launch. It took us months to even find a place to start the church. 8 months in, the movie theater sold, and they came to us on a Friday and said, hey, Sunday's your last Sunday here. And then we bounced around trying to find a place to hold church. We literally had Sundays where at the end of the service it was like, we don't know where church will be next week. Call the office and we'll tell you where it might be, right? And my office was an old beat-up van, an old Chevy van, and that's all I had for an office. And I was driving around in a van, finding a place to park with my books in the back and study. Didn't have an office, didn't have a location. It was hard. And at the end of it, when we laid the church plant down, I was burned out. And I went to a counselor for 3 days. 3 8-hour days, 3 days in a row. And just me and him. And he specialized in ministry workers. And I took the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory and the Myers-Briggs and this and that and the other thing. We took all these tests and a battery of things and talked about life and what I should do and what I should be and that kind of thing. And I'll never forget, we were sitting there talking and he goes, you seem like you're pretty lucid. I'm like, yeah, I'm lucid. Why would you ask that? Because your stress levels are in the region of hospitalized Vietnam vets. I thought something was wrong. I should be a babbling idiot lying in a hospital bed somewhere, right? I'm holding it together. And then he said, he looked at my personality, because I don't know if you've ever done a Myers-Briggs, but I've done Myers-Briggs like 12 times. I always score the same. And he looked at my personality test. He says, what are you doing pastoring a small church? I'm like, I don't know. It wasn't meant to be a small church. We were going to do a church plant. It was going to become a big church. That was the plan. And it all disintegrated when people left and abandoned and hardship and bounced around trying to find a building. And I said, why do you ask? He goes, because you guys, your personality type, you're experts in a field. You are not jack of all trades kind of people. You are the expert in a field. And when you're in ministry, you're either at some mega church as the pastor of something and other guys are experts, or you're the expert in a sub-ministry that only does one thing and does it really, really well. But you're not a jack-of-all-trades guy. And then he pulled out this list. I've never seen it before, and I've never seen it since, and I've taken the Myers-Briggs 12 times in my life. And the list was the top 200 jobs of my personality type. Lawyer was number 1, marketing director was number 2. I don't remember what the rest of them were, but pastoring a small church, 173. Which means you're probably out of step with who God's created you to be, right? Would that be your surmise? That's kind of how I was like, oh, okay, God's got big plans for me. God's got big plans for me. And off I went to my life in 2004 because God had big plans for me. And before it all ended, he threw me on the trash heap of a homeless, defunct church, dysfunctional downtown in Spokane. And that's where I was because God's got big plans for me. And I did that church. It was tough. It was brutal. It was hard. Moved it up to here. And we've got this thing going. And I've always felt a little off because, you know, I'm really not a jack of all trades, small church, solo pastor kind of personality. Doing the best I can. Like, I've always felt like I don't know, a cactus in a rainforest or a cedar tree in the desert, right? You're the right plant in the wrong environment. I've always felt a little restless with that. And a little, you know, but in the meantime, having a great time and loving the people I'm with and doing adventures and creating a lot of headache for my wife and for the other leaders of the church because I've always got an idea. And my ideas are because I got restless. And so I'm going to this pastor's cohort, and we set up to have a gathering together in Ponderay Lake. We set it up about a year ago. Not yet. I didn't do this. Not yet. I will do this. She is so excited for Ponderay Lake, she just doesn't care about it. That's my place. All right. And so I'm getting ready for this. We're going to do it middle of July. And in early June, my blood tests come back saying something's off. And in the last week of June, I am sent in for a PET scan to discover that my cancer is back. Now, for those of you who don't know, I had cancer in 2020. And along my journey with cancer, there was always, and if you ever had this, you meet with doctors, they're like, well, most of the people fall in this, and a handful of people have this bad problem. And like, I had a cellular anomaly. 40% of the people it turns into cancer, but 60% it never becomes anything. I fell in the 40%. Oh, you got cancer. Don't worry. A lot of guys live with your kind of cancer for a long time, and they just take some meds and they're okay. Only a handful of people have to get really hardcore about it. Oh, we'll do your Gleason score, which is how hardcore your cancer is. Mine was off the charts, hardcore active. Oh, so you don't get to sit on it. We have to do something. Now, you can either do a surgery or radiation. You have to pick which one you want. If you do the surgery and it doesn't work, you can do radiation later. And usually that's super, super rare. That doesn't almost ever happen. Once you've done the surgery, you're good to go. In rare cases, you do radiation, and the radiation might come, but it might be 3, 4, 5 years later. If you do radiation and it doesn't work, you cannot go back and do the surgery. So we opted for the surgery because, the odds are they'll get it, they'll cover it, you won't have to do radiation, and even if you do, it'll be 4 or 5 years later. So we opted for the surgery, and the surgeon comes out of it like, I am so confident we got everything, you're good to go. We removed the cancer from your body, and for 8 months he was right, and then he was wrong. And I had to go do 40 days of radiation in addition to the surgery at the end of 2020. And they're popping me with pills and giving me shots on the same. No, they weren't doing the pills, they were doing shots and doing radiation. 40 days. Normally it's 28 days, but I got 40 days. And I remember getting off the table one time and saying to the radiologist, or whatever they call that nurse, and I said, well, you're low dosing me because I'm doing 40 days instead of the normal 28. She's like, we're not low dosing you. You're getting a much higher dose than normal people. I'm like, you shouldn't have said that. And then after I was done with radiation, they said, you're good to go. Usually, though, you know that radiation can cause cancer. So 10, 15 years from now, some other cancer will probably pop up in your body. 5 years later, I have cancer. So you see the pattern in my journey. Every time there was good news, bad news, I fell in the bad news. And so now what they said is, you have stage 4 cancer. We cannot cure it. We can only hold it at bay. We think we can give you many more years. In fact, we have a pretty good success rate of seeing people live 5 years or more past that. And so when I hear, we think we can hold it at bay, and I hear a pretty good success rate means, oh, most of the time you get a pretty good success rate, some of the time you don't, right? We think we can hold it at bay. And then they just casually say, yeah, we have a lot of guys in your case who they keep doing this. You're going to have to do hormones. You're going to have to do shots. You're going to have to do pills probably for the rest of your life. And you will have pop-up cancer constantly coming until you just get tired of it and you don't want to do it anymore. And I'm like, okay, so let me interpret those words in a layman's language. I'm dying of cancer. I just don't know when. Yes. And you think you could get me 5 years. That's how it, and maybe more, maybe 2. Well, I find this out just before the 4th of July. I've already had the radiation. I've already had a series of shots. I'm popping handfuls of pills every day. They're supposed to make me super sick, but so far, so good. Right? So, I know the first thing Christians want to say is, well, let's pray for a miracle. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I'm not against God doing miracles. God does all kinds of miracles all the time. You know how often he does them? Pretty rare. That's why they're called miracles. So you plan for the norm and expect God to do something big. But if God does something big, there's always, what's God thinking? So I don't know. So my wife and I sat down and we said, well, how does this really work? They're saying we think we can hold this at bay pretty well for you for 5 years or more. But if they're wrong again, and you only got 2 years, how would you live them? And since the 4th of July, my wife and I have been holding those discussions. If you only had 2 years, what would you do? Now, here's the thing. If you plan your life around only living 2 more years, and you're wrong and you get 5 years, nothing's lost, right? Because, hey, I rearranged my life, and for 2 years, I lived the life I really wanted to live, and then instead of getting 2 years of it, I got 5 years of it. You're great. But if you plan 5 years worth of time, and you find out you only had 2 years, you'll be mad that you didn't do what you should have done. Am I wrong about that? I don't think so. So since the beginning of July, Tanya and I have been talking about what would you do over the next 2 years? How would this work? And with that in mind, I said, well, The first thing I would do, honey, is I would eliminate clutter in my life. I would eliminate things that I don't think are super crucial for the long term. So immediately, I resigned from being the chairman of the Garland Business District. I resigned, yay, right? Now, why am I the chairman of the Garland Business District, you asked? Well, I'd been going to the meetings, and one thing led to another, and I rewrote the bylaws for them, and I kind of helped host the meetings so they didn't get volatile and calmed them all down. And I sit at a lot of those meetings because a lot of times, stuff comes up in the meetings that offers grant money to the church. We just had that broken window fixed and potholes filled out back. It cost us $3,000 because I was sitting at the right table with the right people. I got $1,500 of it kicked back to us as a grant that we don't have to pay. I sit at those meetings so the church can get grant money. In my many years as a pastor of this church, I have raised well over $200,000 of grant money for First Covenant Church doing business as the Gathering House. So I attend those meetings because stuff happens. I'm in the right conversation with the right people, and it benefits the church. I'm also on the Spokane Homeless Coalition leadership team. I resigned from that. I'm on a couple of advisory panels, and I resigned from. So I'm deeply embedded in the community. But if I only have 2 years, I don't really care about putting lights up in the building, fixing the sidewalks, and doing the stuff we want to do to trim the trees, make this neighborhood more beautiful. There's a $400,000 grant to beautify this neighborhood sitting on my lap that I've been dealing with for 5 years, and we're this close to seeing more money come from it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to fade. Because if I only have 2 years, I don't care about that. What do you care about? Well, I care about the people I love, and you got 2 years to finish saying what needs saying. Do what you need to do with the people you love and say what needs saying. So I go to this retreat with these pastors where the goal is we're all going to come out of this 5 days together, workshop in the morning, workshop in the afternoon, make our own breakfast, make our own lunch, dinner together, bonfires at night at Ponderay Lake. Now, Catherine. And we get that lovely little cabin to stay in for all week last week. A nice, cozy little $3 million home on the lake. And the 6 of us pastors are handed this and said, here's the keys, go stay. Beautiful dock, waves are great, we're hanging out in there and just having a great time. As we go through these legacy statements, trying to figure out who are you and what do you think God wants you to do next? How are you going to finish well? And we were doing morning, like 9 a.m. till noon, a lot of these exercises and stuff that we would do to process our thinking, listen to each other's stories, break for lunch 1 to 4, do it again, have dinner, and then go hang out by the lake, build a bonfire, and we had a great time there. And we're going through all of this stuff, and on Wednesday evening, the session was finalizing your legacy statement, figuring out who you really are, what you really have been in your life, and coming up with a statement that summarizes you so that you can do the final call God would have in your life before you die, the final work God would have for you. And I'm doing this exercise, and I get partway through it, and I could just feel myself going, ugh. My pen dropped, and the papers fell to the ground, and I said, Lord Jesus, I love you, but I can't do this one more time. I did this when I church planted. Actually, I did this when I came out of seminary in 1993. And then when I church planted in the year 2000, I did this, and I had all these big dreams of the ministry I'd have in the church I wanted to do. And then that fell apart. And then at the end of the church plant, I was sort of drying out in a Presbyterian church for a while, just leading worship, helping to get contemporary. They sold a building for $5 million, moved into a new building for $10 million. I helped them do that. And then at the end of that 4-year journey, I'm like, I did it again. Look at me, who am I? Let's do a whole thing. Did this whole kind of process of who am I? What calling should I have? What ministry should I do? And I sent resumes from Maine to Australia, trying to find a ministry for me. And I found nothing. I got one interview at Lake Arrowhead, at a church in Lake Arrowhead, California, and they chose the other guy. The other 200 or 300 resumes I sent out never got a response. And in 2008, the housing market crashed, and we packed up our home, and with no jobs and no home to go to, We loaded up a truck and came back to Spokane because I had family here and didn't have any idea what my calling would be. All along the way, Christian friends would say, God's got something big for you. God's got things for you to do. God has gifted you. You're supposed to do something big for God. I would hear these words all the time in my life. Honestly, even now at this church, there's a lot of people come to me and said, what are you doing here? You should be in a bigger box. I'm like, I don't know. Somebody better tell God. He's the only one who doesn't seem to know that. And so God has something bigger for you. So we loaded up and we come to Spokane. And, through the long story, we end up on this dysfunctional trash heap of a church in downtown Spokane with homeless people, dogs, addicts, poop in the front of my office, guys smoking pot outside my office door. It was a mess and mayhem. Getting flipped off on Sunday mornings, having some guy walk in one Sunday on a Sunday morning, like 30 seconds before we started, stand in the middle aisle, twang, twang, twang on a guitar. Jimmy Page! Jimmy Page! He's screaming at the church, right? And I walk up to him and I say, hey, not here, not now, not today. Oh yeah? F you! He screams in my face and he storms out. And I look around at this little tiny congregation of old ladies and old guys and a few of my friends and big, huge eyes staring at me, and all I can think of, well, it's not your standard call to worship, but I guess today we'll go with it. Oh, story after story of crazy things that happen. I'm like, why am I here? Why am I here? I'm leading worship and I'm preaching sermons and we're feeding 200 homeless guys every Sunday afternoon, and I'm scrambling trying to make ends meet and trying to make things work, and I'm getting grant money here and grant money there. One time in the middle of it, we needed $2,000 a week just to make the budget, just to pay the bills, and we would get offerings of $100, mostly in pocket change. Sometimes Bill Davis would throw a $5 in just to get the offering up to $100. The gap between what we had and what success would be was so huge, you would laugh if you weren't crying so hard. It was just ridiculously absurd. Like, why am I here? And I kept trying to let go of it. I tried to close this church 3 times and God wouldn't let it close. And I kept trying to do these things. And it was bizarre. One time I remember we rolled out a list of donors at the end of one year. We were barely making it. We were literally losing $5,000 a month and going deeper into debt on the building because we got an equity line of credit so that we could just stay alive because the building wouldn't sell because the economy had crashed. And so I once rolled out a list of donors, and there was like 94 people who had donated to the church one year. And Tanya looked at the name, and of the 94, like 83 of them were our friends and family, most of them from California. And like, this church is being supported by my friends in California. This is crazy. This is wild. My friends and family are financing this church. What are we doing here? This is absurd. There's no church left here, right? And then we would end up selling the building, and it was done, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're done. And then there was a dream. It's like Greg Yee comes to me, and our superintendent of the Pacific Northwest Conference of the Evangelical Covenant, and he says, Rob, if there's anything you want to do, anything at all, we'll support you. If you close this church, you're the last church east of Wenatchee. And the Evangelical Covenant denomination doesn't have any presence east of Wenatchee. You're the it. If you close, it will be 10 years before we can rebuild any spiritual energy back in this side of the state. And Spokane is the 3rd largest city in the Pacific Northwest. Seattle, Portland, Spokane, in that order. And he says, if you close, we're done. But if you can just stay open and keep going, it gives us a toehold, a beachhead, so to speak, from which to launch other ministries. So if there's anything you want to do, we'll support you. And we sat down and had this idea to do this crazy coffee shop church. Let's go buy a building and do a coffee shop church, right? And that's what we were going to get. We were going to sell the building. We were going to get $1.25 million. Let's go build a coffee shop and plenty of money living. Woohoo! How many times God give you $1 million and say, go build my kingdom? Never, right? And at that point, a church had come along to us. They were 17 campuses, 15,000 members, $35 million a year of income. No one even knew what their assets were worth because that was all private. And there was an article that popped up in the newspaper the same time they were offering to buy our building downtown. And the article said that they were offering $300,000 above whatever the highest bid was on an office building in downtown Bellevue, the richest city in Washington state. and they're going to offer to buy us. So I said, I just remember telling our real estate guy, don't negotiate the price. We're going to stay firm, right? If you can offer $300,000, that's what their board was deciding. How to offer $300,000 higher than whatever the highest bid is. And they come to us to buy our building, and we were about 45 members, 20 drunks, 4 dogs, and $180,000 in debt. And so we took the deal, thinking I would close the church, but we decided to keep it open because this cash flow is going to happen. Let's do something else. And then as the deal was being inked, one of those 2 churches totally collapsed and doesn't exist anymore. What are the odds of that? Mars Hill Church in Seattle collapsed, and we're still standing. $35 million a year income, $180,000 in debt. We're still standing. They're not. That's crazy. The weirdness of all of that. And then as they were collapsing, they actually couldn't buy our building. So they could make 20% down payment, and then they would make payments over many years. So we actually didn't have enough money to finish this. So we got into this building, and well, it didn't work. And you've heard me tell the story before, how the Catholics helped us build, and the Mormons painted us, and on it went, and what a headache that was. And miraculously got this church open in 2015. And this thing was going to grow to be double services. And 5-6 years later, we're going to be picking a second site, and we're going to be doing Gathering House Valley or Gathering House South Hill. That was the dream. That was the vision. And here we are today. Look at us, right? It's doing this. So I'm with these pastors, and I'm like, Lord, I can't dream big one more time. I don't have it in me. I'm sorry, Jesus, I don't have it in me. So the pastors gather back up in a circle. We're talking. And my turn comes. Okay, Rob, what'd you come up with? And I'm like, hey, I can't do this one. I can't dream big one more time. I'm spent. I'm done. And one guy who didn't know me at all, we'd only met each other on Zoom meetings, cool guy, has 2 PhDs in history. And so he was fun to talk to. This one pastor, he goes, I sense very strongly the Lord is saying to me, and take this as you want, that you are John the Baptist's ministry. God called you to be a bigger light, but in the end, you're stuck in a little box, in John the Baptist's case, a prison, and it's going to end the way Jesus wants it to end, which may not be as big as you wanted it to be. But that's what I feel. I'm like, thank you for that prophetic word. Hold it to yourself next time. And then my buddy Kurt, who I've known for 25 years and is easily my closest friend in the Evangelical Covenant, my pastor friend, he's over in Sumner. He knows Tanya's and my story. He knows all about us. He was there from the time we church planted, all through my journey, all these years. He's been the guy doing the ride with me. And with tears in his face, and he could barely choke them out, he says, you, Rob, are the epitome of someone who gave up all you could have been to lay down your life as a sacrifice to do what Jesus wanted you to do. You have sacrificed the dreams you could have had and wanted to be obedient to Jesus. And I just got to tell you, it's inspiring to me. And he could barely choke the words out. He was crying so hard. That little session ended. We went down, we sort of spread out, and each of us went down somewhere, and I went down to the beach there and sat where that grass is. And I pulled out a couple camping chairs, and I sat in a camping chair to talk to Jesus about this situation. Cancer, never fulfilling my dreams, blah, blah, blah. And Jesus sits in the left side, because if Jesus is in that chair, who's over there? The Father, because Jesus sits on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. I ain't taking that seat. I'll take this one. And I said, Jesus, come and sit. I don't know if you ever do this, but it's worth doing. You pray a little prayer and you invite Jesus to sit beside you. And I put my hand here, and I kept praying until I could feel his mighty hand on mine. And I could feel it. And he placed his hand on mine. We sat there on that grass, and we stared off into the mountains of Ponderay Lake. And I looked back and I said, especially with the first covenant and the whole journey, I said, Lord, what was that all about? What was that all about? That you threw me on that crazy trash heap, which was never my dream, never my desire, never my hope, never my ambition, never anything I would have ever wanted in my life if you'd have told me that when we were young. And with his hand on mine, he said, because you could take it. What do you mean, because I could take it? He says, I wanted to rescue that church, and I needed to send somebody who could take it, and you could take it. And I said, really, Jesus, why didn't you pick somebody else? You had to drag my butt all the way from California. He said, there was no one else. There was no one else who could do what you could do. There was no one else who could endure what you endured. There was no one else who would have stayed. They would have quit. They couldn't lead worship. They couldn't preach. They couldn't fundraise. They didn't have the connections in order to keep the church alive and funded while it went through that part. There was no one else. And you could take it. I was like, oh. So that was the ministry. That was the calling. And he says, this church is 137 years old this year. He says, for the sake of the saints who gathered and built this church for the first 100 years and prayed and put their work and put their effort and put their prayers and their worship to me and asked me to do something for them that would be a legacy, I brought you here to save the church for them. Like, not the saints of the last 20 years of the first covenant, but the first 100 years. And I had the former pastor's name was Lawrence. He said, I had him hold on to it until you were ready. And then I sent you to do this work because you could take it. And I said, hey, Lord, I'm hearing that. It's resonating in my soul. But wow, that's not really the life I wanted. That's not the ministry I wanted. That's not how I wanted life to be. And he says, John didn't get the ministry he wanted. And I didn't exactly get the life on earth I would have wanted. Like, oh yeah, John the Baptist dies beheaded in prison, and look at that nail-scarred hand. That's what it means to lay down your life for Jesus. You don't say, here's what I want, Jesus, give it to me. He instead says, will you let me do what I need done knowing who you are? That's what it really means. And so we have this moment by the lake, and he sort of clarifies, like, oh, so I'm not actually waiting for the final call of ministry in my life. You're telling me I've done it. He's like, yeah. But then he said, but it isn't complete yet. Like, it ain't done yet. But yeah, you've done it. Don't look for something else out there. You've done it. But it still has yet to be finished. So I go back inside and I'm dealing with these guys and talking with them, and I feel like I've got a bit of understanding now. That's a weird word from Jesus when he says, you can take it. Right? You can take it. And so the next day, Thursday, I'm sitting by the lake, and we have a morning session. We have a little bit of window of time that afternoon. And I think now you can go to the next one with go one more. I'm sitting there with my coffee and I'm looking at the lake, and it's like I'm having a sip of coffee about the middle of the afternoon. I don't know, we were done with the session. We're going to have another session at 3, and it's about 1:30, and I'm looking at the lake and like, oh man, we've been up here 4 days and haven't gotten the water once. I should jump in the lake. But then if I jump in the lake, I got to go up and change. I got to come down here, swim in the water, and then I have to go back up and shower and get ready for the 3 o'clock session. And I don't know, maybe I'll jump in the lake next time I'm at Ponderay. And I hear Jesus say, live in the moment. This might be the last time I'm ever sitting at Ponderay Lake. So by God, I jumped in the lake. Yeah. Because that's what it means to live in the moment. It means you live life fully where you are right now, and you don't say, this time or this moment will come around again later, because sometimes it never does. And even if it does come around later, you wasted the moment you could have had. And I feel Jesus is wanting to use my story to tell all of you, live in your moments. Your moments are in front of you every day, all the time. And you can choose to take your moment and sit and scroll Facebook or look at TikTok or whatever, or go home and watch TV or sit around at night and watch a movie. Or you could say, I want to live life fully. What would that feel like? If you thought you only had 2 years to live, what would you do? And the real question is, what would you do differently? And I imagine with a lot of you, just like me, is the first thing is, I'd eliminate silly clutter in my life. Dumb little things that don't really matter. If I had 2 years, this and that, and this problem, and that relationship, and this, I would just knock them off my plate, because if you only got 2 years, I'm going to waste any time on that nonsense. And you say, what do you really want to do? I listen to people a lot who meet people on their deathbed. Very few people regret what they did. They always seem to regret what they didn't do. Their failures are not, I did something wrong. Their failures are, I failed to do something I wished I would have done. And Jesus is wanting to say to all of us, live in your moment. Your moments are now. You don't know when he's coming back, and you don't know what may happen to you. And if you live in the moment for 2 years, thinking that might be all I have, and he gives you 8 to 10 years, you've lost nothing. But if you plan on 10 years and you only got 2, oh, what has been lost. And the irony was, the pastor with the 2 PhDs, while he was up there that whole week, he was also working on a funeral that he had to do the Saturday he got back for a 38-year-old man who went on a bike ride and got hit and killed by a drunk driver. So even though I've been diagnosed with cancer, again, that they can't cure, but they can only hold at bay, and we don't know if I've got 2 years, 5 years, 10 or 12, some of you in the room might die before me. How are you going to live your life? How are you going to live in the moment? I sat down and I thought, well, there's some incomplete work for me. There's some things I want to do. You know how much I've learned doing coffee shop, event center, crazy hub church, this place? I have learned some incredible lessons. And I feel like I'm supposed to pass those on. I don't quite know how. I'm thinking I should just make a video series. I suck at making video. I don't have that technology a bit, but I should just make a video series and post them on my YouTube channel of all the lessons I have learned, and Tanya has learned, and other people who've been on the leadership have learned about how to do a coffee shop church. We should post those. We should leave that information behind before it shouldn't die with us. It shouldn't die with Tanya and I. But we should leave that behind. I'm going to take the book that I've written, Lessons from a Church in Zombieland, which was about downtown and moving to this building. Do it as a podcast. And you can only sell so many books. People listen to podcasts now. Break each chapter into a podcast. Post that as a podcast. And then spend time with the people I really want to spend time with. I have some friends who are really dear to me, but because they're scattered, I have a friend in Hawaii, a friend in California. I've got a daughter in Lancaster, a daughter in Orlando, friends in Arizona. It's like every time we have to kind of choose wisely who we get to visit. We're going to go see some friends in November down in California who we get to see about once every 4 years, maybe 5. And Tanya and I had the conversation, we go see Dave and Karen. This might be the last time we ever see them. Should we go see him anyway? Absolutely. When we see him, are there things we should say? We may never get the chance again. Oh, absolutely. And that sounds weird for me, but honestly, you're all in the same boat. You should think about that with your friends and the people you love. So spending time with the people we love. And I sat down with the board and had to break the news to them. Well, my cancer's back. Now, here's the weird thing. I feel fine. I feel absolutely fine. Like if my blood test hadn't gone crazy, rocket high at a certain score, I would have never known. And they found me. The doctor said, oh yeah, 5 years ago we wouldn't have found this, and you probably wouldn't have made it. The technology now can find it. And so I wouldn't have known. So now I'm looking at like, okay, I told the church leadership, and their thing was, why don't you take some time? Why don't you take August off? Like just, and I'm like, oh cool. So next Sunday, I'm going to tell you how I met Jesus in the first place. And it is a pretty wild, crazy adventure, supernatural story. You won't want to miss it. Next Sunday, I'll tell you how I met Jesus. The Sunday after, we'll do Audubon Park. And I'm going to just be down for a few weeks because it's better just in a healing process to not carry burdens and carry stress and all that kind of thing. Will that be okay with you guys? I'm going to fill the book with this. All right. Here's what I don't want you guys to quit and wait for me to come back Labor Day, right? Be together. Hold this together. So hold that together. So do that kind of, right? And as we finished the sessions out there at the lake, and that lake was so beautiful and clear and clean, you didn't even need to go take a shower. It was beautiful. I loved it. Glad I did that. It might be the last time I ever get a chance to jump in Pondray Lake, but I'm going to work on making sure that isn't the last time, but you never know. The very last thing we did before we left was something called a compass prayer. And I've got compass prayers for all of you, and I got some ushers who are going to hand these out. And we did a compass prayer. And the compass prayer is really interesting because it's a way to evaluate your life. They're going to pass these out to each one of you. And as they do, let me explain how you fill this out. On the back is this little circle. And there's a north, south, east, and west. And you're not going to be able to do it here now. You're going to take it home. It's going to be like a little thing you do as an exercise for your own life. And what you do is you take the north and you say, north, that's the direction of the North Star. That's magnetic north. That is the direction by which we find all other directions. You find east and west and south based on where true north is. And so you look at those. So it's the things in your life that are actually the driving forces that stabilize your life. And if you were to fill out at this area, what driving forces stabilize your life? For me, it's my relationship with Jesus, the Bible, family. There's things that go there. They're like, they are the top priorities. They get everything. Other decisions get made in light of those stabilizing forces. Figure out what those are for you. And then down at the south end, that's the sun side. That's the sunny side, the side that gets the most sun. It's the side that gets sort of the reflective beauty and the easy growth things. Those are the things that are exciting to you, that give your life meaning and purpose and joy, that give your life recreation, that fill you up with some sort of sense of well-being. So fill out down there the things that would be your sunny side of life. And on the eastern side, that's the side of the sunrise. What new beginnings are happening? What's going on in your life that you sense God is saying to me, there's something new I should start, or there's a new friendship I'm supposed to invest in, or a new opportunity is supposed to grow. The east side is the stuff that is emerging with the dawn. And when the full light comes on it, it's going to be the new thing God has you doing. And the west side is the stuff, it's time, the sun is setting on it. It had a time, maybe it was something you need to let go of because it doesn't serve any purpose. Or maybe it was a good thing in your life, but it's time to change. The sun is setting on that. It's stuff you're going to let go of. Maybe it is an activity, maybe it is a relationship. Who knows what it might be? For everybody, it's a little different. So in the compass exercise, you figure out your true north. You figure out what lights your fire and lifts you. You figure out what are the new dawning things in my life, and then what are the things I'm going to let go of. And then you take these lists of these quadrants to Jesus, and you spend some time in prayer with him. And you say, okay, God, in light of the compass, what should my priorities be that I can live in this moment of my life and not waste it? What is it you want me to do? What is my desire for my relationship with Jesus? What do I actually offer other people? How do I hope to serve and help other people? And why do I even want to live this way? What is it that's lighting me up? So over the next week, take your compass prayer, spend some time in it, and meet with somebody you care about or who loves you, a friend, a spouse, family member, and talk about it. And as you talk about it, it'll get clearer to you what Jesus wants you to do and where he might want you to go. So it's going to be an interesting journey over the next few weeks. And I don't know, I'm going to visit some friends. I've got some projects at home. Tanya and I had to have kind of conversations about, we've got 3 or 4 things I need to get done around the house, that if things go terribly, terribly south, I don't want her to be left with it without me present. You know, I don't want to leave her as one of those wives that says, well, Rob and I always meant to fix this or repair that or do this, and we just never got around to it. And then she's left with it alone. I don't want that, so I'm going to be doing some of those things. So, and guess what? If I get 5 years, I won't regret that, will I? I won't. And I think Jesus is saying to all of us, and it is especially clear to the New Testament, that's how I want you to live. That's how I want you to live. I've always wanted you to live in your moments, not regretting the past and not anxious about the future, because when we do that, we lose the present moment. And in the present moment is where life really is. And so use your moments wisely. I'm asking Jesus, anything else? He says, no, they got it. All right, stand with me and let's pray. Jesus, you are a magnificent and wondrous God. And I say all the time that you are preparing us for an eternity in heaven with you. And yet I confess, at least for me, I get it confused with life on earth that's supposed to be a certain way. Sorry for that. I understand you are after bigger and better and higher things. You are after changing and transforming us so that we will be prepared for 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 years in eternity. And you are shaping us to be what we need to be for those days. And we get so confused and wrapped up in these days, in the silly little 70-year lifespan we get on earth, that we so obsess about that we forget that our souls are being prepared for eternity. And Lord, I'm going to confess on behalf of all of us right now, we're all looking at you saying, hey, Lord, I'm not exactly living the life I wanted. This isn't exactly the pain-free life I wanted to have happen, and yet we look at your nail-scarred hands and we say, never mind. Because you know suffering and pain way deeper than even we do. And you sacrificed yourself for us in a horrific sacrifice so that we could live forever with you. And we lay our lives down at your feet and say, whatever price you want us to pay, okay, it's worth it. Send us where you would send us, and have us do what you would have us do, and have us serve you to the best of our abilities in every circumstance you put us in, for the sake of who you are, and for the sake of what you're trying to do in us. So may your Spirit fill these people in this room. May your Spirit fill the people who are watching online. May your Spirit fill the people who will see this later online. And awaken in each of us, Lord, the power, the blessing, the intelligence, the awareness, the wisdom to see our moments and live as wise people, not as unwise, taking our moments and using them to be fulfilling the life you want. These things I pray in your name, in your character, in harmony with the will of the Father who sits on the throne. May you fill us, Lord. Make us who you want us to be, and take the clutter out of our lives that's blocking us from seeing you clearly, worshiping you freely, and being the servants you want us to be. These things I ask in your holy name. Amen. Okay, next week, crazy adventure, supernatural story, how I met Jesus. Let me come down. so bizarre.
I'll let you know when I get a third.
That's not him. He wants to be outdoors. But Jesus would say later.